Here at Disaster Breakdown, we have looked at a lot of different transporting disasters spanning decades. And when it comes to those accidents that are a bit more unbelievable, this one probably takes the cake. The story behind this air disaster from 2010, when I first read about it, I was personally stunned to find out it was even real. A small propeller commuter plane was making a routine landing when it suddenly pitched forward and dove into the ground, the pilots seemingly losing control of their plane unexpectedly. The accident killed most people on board. The reason behind this sudden loss of control will leave you baffled. Our story today takes us to the Central African nation known as the Democratic Republic of Congo, not to be confused with neighboring Republic of Congo. The DRC is one of the largest countries on the African continent. Home to over 100 million people, the capital, Kinshasa, is one of the largest cities in all of Africa. Even though this country is, well, one of the least developed in the entire world, it still boasts a functioning aviation network. Flying is perhaps the best way to reach the various towns across the vast rainforest landscape, and Kinshasa actually has 2 airports. Njili Airport is found out east in the city. This airport caters to international traffic, whereas Ndolo Airport is found more in the center, which is used more as a domestic hub. For the longest time, one airline that was based out of Ndolo Airport was the regional Congolese airline known as Filair. Not a whole lot is known about Filair, but whatever shenanigans the carrier was getting up to certainly didn't go unnoticed internationally. Filair was put on a blacklist and was banned from flying in European airspace. The airline flew a number of older prop planes acquired from the United States and Europe. Such was the case with a 1991 built propeller plane manufactured by the Czech company LET-L410. Introducing the LET-L410. The L410 is a tiny twin-engine propeller plane. It has a number of different uses, from cargo transportation to general aviation and even thrill-seeking, as the plane is sometimes the plane of choice for skydiving, for example. There, of course, is even a passenger variant of the plane. The plane, when configured with a passenger cabin, can seat up to 19 passengers, plus 2 pilots for a total of 21 occupants. There is also a space behind the passenger seating for the storage of larger bags and cargo. The L410 plane of discussion today, when it first took to the skies, flew frequently in Eastern Europe before its time in Congo. Filair acquired the plane in 2009. For the next year, the aircraft would buzz around the large African country, connecting countless people from the remote reaches of the nation to the bustling Kinshasa. Which brings us to August 25th, 2010. That day was a Wednesday, and the itinerary for the plane that day was a circular route. Leaving Kinshasa's Ndolo Airport, the route would take the plane north to the town of Kiri. From there, the plane would make its way southbound, stopping over in Bakoro, Semendwa, and Bandundu, before returning to Kinshasa. In a way, the aircraft acts as a literal Airbus that connects these communities together. Some passengers would leave at each town, and some would board. The first 3 of these legs were performed without issue, the plane arriving in Semendwa ahead of its departure to Bandundu that afternoon. One passenger here turned up at the airport with a piece of luggage in the form of a large duffel bag. In terms of cargo storage on the passenger L410, many passengers may have been able to keep a hold of their belongings if they're small enough. There are no overhead compartments on this plane, and as previously stated, some carriers also kept larger bags at the rear of the cabin, behind the last row of passenger seating. One can only assume, given the size needed to contain what was actually inside this thing, the bag in question on this flight was kept at the rear of the cabin with the rest of the larger bags, and not carried onto the plane with the passenger themselves. The The contents of this bag, as would soon become apparent, were clearly never checked by whoever was in charge of security at that airport. Not that Semendwa Airport has very many facilities to begin with. The airport, if you can call it that, consists of a single strip with a grassy apron, and from what one can gather from satellite imagery, a single tiny building. With 18 passengers, 1 flight attendant, and 2 pilots, this was a full plane, as it left for its next stop to Bandundu. One of the 2 pilots, according to one source, was actually the owner of the airline itself. The majority of the flight would be uneventful. It was what happened in the final moments of this leg where things went very, very wrong. On final approach into the Bandundu airport, the Filair L410 was approaching from the west. The passengers strapped into their seats, the pilots lowering the landing gear and bringing out the flaps. To set the scene here, this could easily have been the average landing of a commuter plane like those seen all over the world. Except, what happened next was anything but average. For now, let's think about how what followed might have looked for the local ground observer. The plane suddenly lost altitude. The pilots had seemingly lost control of their aircraft. Seconds later, the small plane crashed into the home of a local resident. And when the plane crashed, there was no explosion or post-crash fire, which led, for some, initial speculations coming in the form of fuel starvation, which was far from the real cause. But to examine what happened on that plane in those final seconds, we need to re-examine that one piece of cargo that was loaded onto the plane. Back in the cargo compartment in the final moments of the flight, the previously loaded duffel bag began to move, and out emerged, I kid you not, a crocodile. The passenger had smuggled a live crocodile onto a plane. This is one of those things that is just so absurd that it begs the obvious questions about whether or not the scenario was actually real or not. But according to all known sources, this appears to be true. Maybe for just a second, try to imagine being a passenger on that flight. When you're strapped in for landing, maybe looking out the window, and you catch a glimpse of this crocodile escaping from its sack and making its way down the aisle. It is believed that the flight attendant was one of the first who noticed the aquatic reptile and rushed to the cockpit. As you could probably imagine, they weren't the only one to do so. On such a small plane with nowhere to go but forward, the presence of the crocodile caused such a panic that all the passengers leapt from their seats and made their way to the front of the plane any way they could. Multiple sources appear to describe a narrative from a surviving passenger. From this, the approach was perhaps abandoned, and the flight was to make a go-around to try and land onto an emergency runway next to the main airstrip at Bandundu. However, before this could occur, disaster struck. When this crocodile escaped and the passengers were panicking inside the cabin, there was a massive change in the aircraft's center of gravity, which had now been tipped towards the nose. Every plane has a general range of where the center of gravity should be for safe operation. When outside of these limits, such as being too far aft, or in this case, too far forward, problems can occur. This massive change in center of gravity led to the loss of control that doomed the plane. The plane entered a nosedive and plummeted towards the ground, crashing into a house roughly 1 kilometer short of the runway. Of the 21 occupants on board, 19 were killed in the initial crash. One initial survivor later died, leaving just one passenger as the sole survivor. The house the plane crashed into was unoccupied at the time of disaster. Congolese investigators, when they were done with the crash, found that the plane did crash due to a sudden change in center of gravity, and even went with the crocodile being the supposed instigator for the panic. As for the crocodile itself, according to some sources, it too had actually survived, and to be honest, all things considered, the crocodile really didn't do anything wrong. It was put in a situation it was never meant to be in. It was smuggled on board inside a luggage bag for reasons we can't seem to find answers for, and naturally, it wanted to escape. The crocodile, however, was supposedly later tracked down, and according to one source, it apparently met its fate with a machete. So we just don't know why this crocodile was even on board this plane to begin with. Sources leave this unexplained, and with the culprit passenger now dead, we may never know. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I know this has been a shorter one, but I had arranged to make this one given the move I had and stuff, and I'm happy to say that that's all now being completed. All moved into the new place and settling in. I'm also, as you could probably hear in this video, still recovering from a nasty cough. Hopefully I'll be seeing the end of that before I do the voiceover for the next video on Monday. Hopefully. Anyway, I think we'll quickly move into the Patreon outro. A massive thanks to my patrons over on Patreon for their generous ongoing support to the channel. Their names are scrolling on the screen right now, so if you do see your name here, a massive thanks to you. Shout out this week, I guess it's the return of Where Are My Cheetos, who repledged at the highest tier this week. What a legend, thank you so very much. If you, yourself, would like to support the channel further and even get your name featured here at the end of the next video, you can join the Disaster Breakdown Patreon from just £1 per month, and the link to that will be in the pinned comment below. All patrons get early access to all new content 2 days before it goes out publicly on YouTube. That's where we'll end things for this week. Thanks for watching, have a great weekend, Christmas and holiday season. I will see you all next weekend, just before the new year. Goodbye.